I'm Scott Simi, Chief Content Editor with InDro Robotics, and on this edition of our SoundByte micropodcast, I'm joined by Joel Koscielski, Hardware Engineering Manager at InDro Forge. Welcome, Joel.
Thanks for having me, Scott. It's always great to jump on these calls and chat through some of the new technology we're working with and how it can be useful to our clients.
Nice. Maybe we could start with just a brief review of what InDro Forge does, which I know is a lot.
For sure. So, InDro Forge in a nutshell is InDro's hardware development, prototyping, and production facility. So, we have the equipment in house for us to do small batch production of our standard platforms, things like 3D printing, water jet cutting sheet metal, forming, inserts, CNC machining. And then anything from there that we need to send out, we have sent out for welding, powder coating, things like that. And so when they come back, we could do the assembly and the initial software bring up of the robots before they head out to our clients or to our other facility at Area XO.
And so with all those tools and expertise at your disposal, we're fabricating InDro products as well as custom robots for other clients. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. So we have our standard solutions that we like to work with, ones that we know that are modifiable and very quick for us to be able to get ready for clients. But we also recognize that they don't cover the full range of challenges that our clients face. So there are times where we need to work with a longer timeline and really start from the ground up and define what that robot needs to be and develop it, from just a set of components as opposed to a prefabricated base robot that we do with a lot of our other platforms.
Now, we've seen a real scaling since InDro began operating Forge back in September of 2023. It was previously the Bayview Yards prototyping lab. You were there at that point. What differences have you seen since InDro began operations?
So when the transition happened back in 2023, the prototyping lab was doing a fairly broad set of tasks for quite a broad set of clients. And one of the things we've seen over these last couple of years is really a refinement and a focus in our work. So we really try to focus now on the kind of robotics and technology development to support those robotic platforms so that we're more capable in the areas where we can provide the greatest value to our clients. It's important to say that we're not going to not take on other work, but where we spend most of our time nowadays is working with those kind of folks that are looking to take our pre-existing technology and develop it into something that they can make useful in their space, and bringing on staff that specializes in that type of work. So industrial designers that are capable of making robots that look fantastic and are very user-friendly, specialists in electronics that are able to push our custom PCBs into the next level of technology and capability so we can stay kind of up to date with the most recent tech, and the folks in between that are making sure that all of these things are going together kind of effectively and are properly serviceable when they are delivered to our clients.
Now, I understand you've also seen a rise in demand for customized quadrupeds and humanoids. Why is that?
Yeah, humanoids are certainly are the it technology right now in the robotic space. We see them all over the place in all of our feeds nowadays. Robots have existed in some way, shape, or form for decades, and what we've seen in more recent applications is trying to push them into areas where your standard wheel robot or a stationary robot just aren't really set up to handle the environment. So one of the things that you'll see with the most recent generation of quadrupeds is their ability to handle really kind of aggressive terrain. So stairs and steep slopes and really uneven terrain. They can really be a lot more flexible in the environment that it works with. And humanoids is that push to really find a way to build robots that are able to easily or effectively integrate themselves into a world that was already designed for humans.
Now, it's often said that robots and drones are perfect for the 3Ds, jobs that are dirty, dull, or dangerous. On that last word, dangerous, maybe you could touch on the increasing use of robotics in hazardous environments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dangerous and hazardous can mean a couple of different things. So, I mean, one thing that we can very quickly recognize is if you're working in an environment where, let's say you're in a building that's unstable and you know that there's a risk of either pieces of it falling or the whole thing coming down, you're in a mine shaft that hasn't been used for 100 years. These are things where we can de-risk the entire situation by using something that is lower value and something that we can send down knowing that if for some reason something bad happened, it's just a robot down there and it can be rebuilt, replaced. We don't want to send a human down there and risk their health, risk their safety. The other part of this that we see is when the issue is not necessarily structural, but is environmental. So if you're working in that same building and you're dealing with something like an asbestos built building, or you're dealing in an environment that has been dealing with radioactive, I should say, material for 20, 30 years, and that's now particulate in the environment, it's not necessarily dangerous to the robot, but it is dangerous when the robot has to come out of that environment and be used by its operators. So if it's covered in a layer of this material, we now need to be careful about, we can't just go in and start working with it. We have to find a way to make it safe again for those people to interact. And there's a couple of ways we can do that. You can obviously, if you've got a perfectly sealed robot, you can clean it and kind of wipe it down, but that's a little bit time consuming and isn't always easy to do with all the little nooks and crannies. So one of the other things you can do is do the same thing we do with humans, where you just kind of wrap them in a protective layer. You can imagine a humanoid that's been put in, I'm going to call it a bunny suit, right? A Tyvek white suit that provides a protective layer that can easily be peeled off of the robot and make it so that it's easy to work with and safe to work with again in a very short period of time without adding all of that additional burden.
One of the frequent modifications we do is add something known as the InDro backpack, which can greatly expand capabilities and make future modifications easier. Tell us what the backpack is and does.
Yeah, so most of the platforms we work with come with basic, control through a controller. And that doesn't necessarily allow you the opportunity to control it from a remote environment. So the InDro Packback goes a long way to providing all of those capabilities. So adding additional compute, adding additional connectivity so that if you're in an environment where you need cellular, you can have access to that. If you're in an environment that needs a specific communication protocol, we can add that specific thing that you need to the robot without having to modify the base platform itself. So just adding on all of the different capabilities that you need to make it a fully functional system and remote operated when that's required.
I know there's been at least one client who wanted a robotic arm mounted on a quadruped. And I guess the point here is that we do more than add backpacks and generally can completely customize for a client's needs. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I have to give a shout out to our sales manager, Luke Corbett, who does a lot of work with our clients to make sure that he understands their needs. And he'll work with them to make sure that we've got the right combination of things that we have pre-developed, and where we need to, adding the specific pieces of technology that complete the solution, like additional sensors or arms, so that when it arrives, it's everything that they need it to be.
What is the relationship with InDro's engineering headquarters at Area XO, and why is that so important?
So the facility we have at Area XO and the Area XO facility in general is a test bed. So this is where our software team spends the majority of their time working on taking the hardware we've developed and pushing it to do new and exciting things, and having an environment to do that where it's not going to kind of get in anybody's way, or it's not going to be a risk to have it operating.
What does the future of InDro Forge look like to you?
To me, it is continuing to refine our processes and techniques to continue to shorten lead time, continuing to what I'm going to call productize the things that we've started to develop and are recognizing have significant value in the industry. So making sure that we've got things built to a quality and to a capability where they can just be taken straight out of the box, added into whatever somebody needs to connect them to, and be used for years and years.
Joel Koscielski, Hardware Engineering Manager at InDro Forge, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.